So this comment or question comes to us from Akalis, and it's from Australia. I think that's the AKA. Anyways, like I say, when I look at all your addresses and the names, I'd like to know who you are. But the comment is about how you start to get the hips to work and how they have to stay out of the way. One of the biggest misconceptions or tasks we've had in golf is to restrict this right hip and then fire your right hip as hard as you can. Well, first of all, there's got to be some place for your right hip to go. And what I mean by that is if you get back and you're concentrating on firing your right hip, what happens is your left hip, if I get here and I just fire my right hip, see, my left hip pivots from where it is. So if it stays there and I fire my right hip, all I'm doing is I'm throwing my hips up and into the ball. So you have to maintain the same relationship, your hip sockets from the ball, so that the center of your pelvis, if I go back and I move and this hip doesn't and this hip fires, it moves the center of my pelvis closer to the ball. So what we've got to start with is right with chipping and pitching, is how your left hip works. So as the club comes into the ball, my left hip starts right here. As the club comes down into the ball, my left leg pushes my left hip further away from the target line than it started at address. It has to go back. Now, if I come into the ball and my hips turn, but my left hip doesn't move further away, then your hips move right up into the ball. So we start with little chip shots where I come down, and this is where you start training it. So here comes the momentum of the club, and it's coming down into the ball, and it's gonna go out. So now, as the club's coming down through here, my left leg is pushing my left hip out of the way. So my left hip is further away from the ball when I run the club into the ball than it was at address. That's one of the big reasons why people struggle with, when I say set up, go to impact. Because when they go to impact, all they do is they push their right leg, right hip, and right shoulder up this way. They don't push their left hip with this leg out of the way. Push this hip back, which gives this leg room to move forward. So when you're practicing, these little chip shots, if you watch my left hip, it starts right here. When I run into the ball, my left hip gets pushed out of the way by my left foot. So my left hip is further away from the ball than it was at address. Almost everybody I watch, chipping, pitching, they start here, they go back, and they come in. Now, even if their hips are turning, they turn this way. So this hip doesn't move out of the way, so there's no space for me to swing the club. So you start right there, like I did right there, training your left hip to push your left hip out of the way as the club's swinging through. And that's important because now you're timing the momentum of the club with the push away, which that's what you start to sync out, which makes your swing consistent. If I twist too early, see, I'm ahead of the momentum. If I stand there and I go like this, that's not good either. So when everybody says it's a blend, yeah, well, what are you trying to blend and tie it to? The momentum on of the club head and the force of the club head. So as you start to feel how that works, it starts to work the same way with every club. It's just a slower club. So you start there and you've got to start to feel how to push your left hip out of the way. Now, it's not turn your hips. Everybody, you say, turn your hips. No, it's not a hip turn. Your hips are going to turn. Why? Well, the club's coming down, it's going into the ball, and this pushes this hip back. When this hip goes back, this hip goes forward. Now my pelvis is rotating, not because I'm trying to twist my hips. It's because I'm pushing my hip out of the way. That's a whole different world to live there and time that with the club than it is trying to stand here and say, okay, turn your body, turn your body. Well, turn it relative to what? I agree your body turns, but how does it turn and what's the easiest way to sync it out? It starts right there with your pitch shots. Be sure to subscribe to my channel for regular updates and tips. Thanks for watching.